The Indian economy is characterized by a federal structure having 29 states and 7 union territories. This federal structure truly came into being with the Government of India Act 1935, which clearly defined the distribution of powers between the center, that is the central government, and the state, that is the state governments. The independent India adopted this federal structure of government on the guidelines laid down by the USA and Canada constitutions. This bifurcation of powers between the center and the state was done to control the concentration of powers with the government at the union and to ensure proper functioning and development of the economy. This structure of Indian economy though looks federal but is unitary in nature and hence can be called quasi-federal structure. It is so called since in such a system the central government and the state governments act within a well-defined area, co-coordinating among themselves and simultaneously act independently. Whereas the federal polity provides a constitutional setup to bring unity in diversity and to achieve the common goals of national interest. In this chapter, we will examine this federal structure of the government and analyze its working. We then move to analyzing the role and importance of governments at the local levels and their limitations and conclude the findings. After studying this module, you shall be able to know the basic structure of federal finance in India, learn how the government functions at multi-levels, identify the role and importance of local self-government, evaluate the working of local self-government, and analyze structural changes and limitations of local self-government. Now, let us study the basic federal structure of the Indian economy. Till 1992, the Indian federal system had two-tier structure having the central government functioning at the center and the state government functioning at various states. The distribution of power and functions of the government were given to state and the central government, both working in their well-defined fields and yet working towards the common goal of achieving economic development of the country. However, for widespread and equity-oriented development of the country, it was decided to start the developmental process at the grassroots level in order to achieve the dual function of faster and inclusive growth of the country, and so came into existence the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts in 1992 of Constitution of India. The 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts of the Indian Constitution brought the local self-government system as the third tier of governance so that the economy not only achieve its objectives of economic development but also ensure social justice. Thus, the distribution of powers and functions trickled down further to local self-governments where the panchayats function at the village level and municipalities and municipal corporations at the city levels. This implies that the Indian economy's federal structural now is a three-tier setup. These 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts has provided a constitutional basis for democratic and decentralized planning process, thereby giving a legal status to the rural, that is panchayat, and the urban, that is municipal local bodies as self-government institutions. This has raised the expectations that it would trigger development at all territorial levels. Decentralization by using the involvement of local level representative institutions in the developmental process and in its implementation is being advocated in the interest of efficient utilization of resources and for ensuring more equitable sharing of benefit from development. The following figure shows the three-tier structure of the federal system in India. As you can see, we have the central government, then the state government, which includes the urban local bodies, that is municipal corporations and municipalities, and rural local bodies. Then we have union territories, which includes district panchayats, block panchayats and village panchayats. The Article 40 of Part 4 of the Directive Principles of the State Policy of the Indian Constitution stated that necessary steps should be taken by the state to organize village panchayats and to provide them with various powers and authority so that they are able to function as units of self-government. The Panchayati Raj institutions were established with the aim to achieve integrated and participatory economic development at the micro level. The first and the second 5-year plans introduced community development blocks and district development councils. According to the then Ministry of Community Development, Government of India, the initiative for community development program comes from the people themselves. Village communities not only choose the priorities according to which the problems are to be tackled, but they also undertake the major responsibility for implementing them. The role of the government is to assist all these activities at every stage. Officials guide and help the villagers. They provide technical advice and organize supplies, services and finance. In 1957, the Balwant Rai Committee recommended establishment of the panchayats at the village, block and district levels. As per this committee, following observations was made on decentralization, that is, so long as we do not discover or create a representative and democratic institution which will supply the local interest, supervision and care necessary to ensure that expenditure of money upon local projects conforms with the needs and wishes of the locality, invest it with adequate power and assign to it appropriate finances, we will never be able to evoke local initiative in the field of development. As per the Balwant Rai Mehta Committee's recommendations, the Panchayati Raj system was to have 3 tiers at the village, block and district levels. At the village and block levels, there were to be elected democratic bodies. At the district level, there was to be an advisory body under the chairmanship of the district collector. MPs, MLAs and other important persons were to be its members. The elected bodies were given the responsibility to carry out necessary developmental activities with its recommendations. Many Panchayati Raj institutions were set up in many states. Thereafter, the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act came into force on 24th April 1992 to give constitutional status to Panchayati Raj institutions at the state and district levels. The objective of these institutions was to dilute the powers and responsibilities of the centre and the state to the panchayats with a degree of local autonomy to achieve the twin objective of economic development and social justice. Apart from this, it was also intended to generate greater local people participation in local government and to ensure better and effective implementation of rural development programs. In short, the entire purpose is to ensure effective democratic decentralization. The 74th Amendment Act of the Indian Constitution came in 1992 following the 73rd Amendment Act. This act gave constitutional status to the municipalities and aimed at strengthening and regenerating the urban local governments so that they may function as effective units of local government. Now, what is local self-government? Before discussing various features and functions of a local self-government, let's first define what a local self-government is. There have been many definitions of a local self-government, and this term has been used interchangeably with the local government. As per Gokhale in 1972, a local government is the government of specific locality by the local people through their representatives elected by them. Similarly, according to Wilson et al. In 1994, the local government is a large geographically defined multifunctional organization pursuing a variety of social, political and economic objectives either through direct provision or through the sponsorship, indirect funding, regulation or monitoring of a very extensive range of services to its local community. Keeping these definitions in mind, we can briefly define a local self-government as the government functioning in local areas or towns which are run by people elected by the local people of the area based on the principle of decentralization, that is, withdrawal from the center. These local bodies have a great degree of autonomy while making their decisions, and they are responsible to the local people and the law. These institutions raise finance or revenue through local taxation and spend these funds in carrying out various local developmental programs, projects and local services. Now, we will discuss the role and nature of local self-government. Recognizing the importance of democratic institutions at the grassroots level, the local self-governments have been entrusted to carry out various functions so as to ensure integrated and equity-oriented overall development of the economy. In India, there are two types of local self-governments. One is the municipal local self-government and the other is the village local self-government. There are approximately 6,45,000 local governments of India, which includes panchayats at the rural level and nagar panchayats and municipalities at the urban level. The village local self-government basically includes the village or gram panchayats. This also includes Zilla Parishad, and they are the democratic setup at micro level in rural India. These village panchayats hold elections in their respective areas, and the elected person called Sarpanch becomes the head of the institution. These institutions also reserves seats for women candidates. The village panchayats have the responsibility to develop the village by executing various planned projects and making proper utilization of available resources. For this, they need revenue which comes mainly from the property and other taxes, and also these panchayats receive grants in aid from the respective state governments. The municipal local self-governments, on the other hand, are the democratic institutions which are set up at the grassroots level in the urban India. These include municipality development authorities, local trusts, town area committees, etc. These bodies look into the local affairs of cities and towns and work towards achieving various locally specified goals using their administrative, legislative and financial powers. As far as the functions of the local government bodies are concerned, it is important to know that these local authorities are able to deliver their duties by generating finances or funds through levying various taxes and fees on the people. Also, they receive some grants from the state in order to function properly. Some of the important functions of local self-government are: 1. That is to formulate proper town or village planning and to make efficient use of resources to achieve the goals of planning. Second is to ensure proper supply of water which is safe and clean to drink. Third is construction of roads and drainage and sewage systems. Fourth is repair and maintenance of proper roads, sewage and drainage system. Fifth is construction and maintenance of public transport, highways, bridges, etc. Sixth is providing street lighting, lighting of roads and public lighting. Seventh, preservation of public gardens and parks. Eighth, providing public health, sanitation and hygiene services. Ninth, ensuring proper educational and community development. 10th, ensuring food and electricity supply and social justice. Then developing industrial or agricultural activities, and last to ensure integrated and planned rural or urban growth. The importance of local self-government can be seen with the help of above mentioned functions, since many of the civic services to the people can be best provided by these local authorities as they are closest to them. These authorities know much better about their local people needs and hence will function better to achieve the goals of economic development and integrity. Thus, the economic progress of the nation as a whole can be achieved by carrying out developmental programs at the grassroots level with the help of local self-governments. The following figure shows some important characteristics of local self-governments, these are located in the local areas, controlled by local authorities, provide civic services to local people, generate funds through local people or state, requires local people participation, enjoy local autonomy, provides local leadership, accountable to local people, aim at developing local areas based on decentralization principle. Now, let us discuss some of the limitations of local self-governments prior to 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. Even though the local self-governments are an important tool to the Government of India to achieve inclusive economic growth, yet they faced various day-to-day challenges before the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts came into being. These institutions were necessary for a democratic society since they led to decentralization of powers. However, they did not fully fulfill their objectives due to many reasons. Some of the major limitations of local self-government in Indian economy prior to 1992 were as follows. First, these institutions were used by the elite and powerful class, especially in rural areas, to fulfill their objectives and not the national objectives. Second, there was lack of devolution of finance functions and administrative staff in the Panchayati Raj institutions. Third, one of the main limitations was the problem of financial autonomy, since these local bodies have to depend upon the state for the funds to finance various developmental local projects. Next limitation was that these institutions suffered from shortage of funds, federal constraints and reluctant bureaucracy. There was little clarity about the role among the district, block and gram panchayats. Then these institutions failed to fulfill the objectives of gender equality, social justice and other changes at the micro level. There was a constant clash of interest between panchayats representatives and the legislatures. These local bodies also suffered from lack of supervision, coordination between officials and local people and also administrative problems. The shortage of staff made the progress of these local institutions rather slow and tardy. They faced pressure from the political parties and thus suffered from corruption and manipulations. Their services were often discriminatory towards the local people because of regionalism. The elections of Panchayati Raj institutions did not held regularly and there were issues of discrepancies and transparency in their workings. In order to make these institutions more strong and an alternate source of influence on people, the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts were initiated, which brought with them the new era of local self-governments and democratic decentralization. Now, we are going to discuss the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts, that is, changes in the structural features of local self-government. By recognizing the importance of local self-government at the grassroots level and the hurdles and challenges faced by these local bodies, the Government of India initiated the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts, which made democratic decentralization participatory in nature. They not only gave meaning but also substance to these local self-governments at the rural and urban levels. After the initiation of these acts, approximately all states and union territories enacted their legislation and removed the hurdles in the path of their functioning. Also, they gave way to the development and empowerment of poorer sections of the society and to women empowerment. Elections have been taking place in various parts of the states and seats have been reserved for women and other weaker sections of the society to ensure social equity and justice. Also, there has been massive increase in the participation of voters in the elections. Many states such as Kerala, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, etc. have placed local level functionaries of government departments under the control of panchayats. As per Johnson in 2003, the World Bank's 3-volume study of Indian decentralization, that is World Bank 2000A, 2000B and 2000C, ranks India among the best performers internationally in terms of political decentralization, but close to the last in terms of administrative decentralization. Most states have held at least one round of elections since 1993. Reservations allowing the participation of women, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes have been respected, although there is a great scope for corruption. And finally, voter participation has been high. In its study of 53 villages in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, for instance, the World Bank found that voter turnout in panchayat elections was well over 90% for all categories defined in terms of gender, class and caste. This is significantly higher than the still high turnout for the most recent 1998 round of Lok Sabha elections, which was 61% for women and 65.9% for men. However, even after bringing such dramatic changes after so many years since 1992, the 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts still have their drawbacks. There is still no clarity of role between the district, block and gram panchayats. There has also been uncertainty regarding their functional jurisdiction and problem of financial autonomy. Thus, they still have to depend upon the state to carry out their functions and for funds to finance their local developmental projects. Another major problem faced by these local bodies is that they have to work as per the bureaucracy of the state and political parties. Also, the shortage of staff and lack of control over them also makes these institutions vulnerable towards achieving their goals. Different states have shown different progress relating to local self-government. There has been lack of coordination among the elected representatives of the local self-government and the local people in the respective areas. Apart from these, the growing population and rural-urban migration are further challenges faced by the local self-government to ensure equity-oriented development. Also, as per the World Bank report on rural decentralization in India in 2000, the existence of social divisions in rural India is the biggest hurdle in the path of local self-government to achieve its goal of social justice and inclusive growth. Now, I am going to summarize whatever we have studied in this module. The above discussion on the local self-government clearly shows that it is important for such institutions to develop in Indian economy, not only to ensure democratic decentralization but also to ensure proper development of local areas in harmony with the national economic development. Unless and until the economic growth is not inclusive, the real development of the country cannot take place. And this inclusive growth can be brought by strengthening the local self-governments in their respective areas. The 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts, which were initiated in 1992, gave powers to the local self-government in order to increase the pace of regional development. These acts brought a revolutionary change in the Indian economy by introducing an element of people's participation in the development of the economy. However, these acts have not been able to fully strengthen the local self-government, due to which they have been facing various challenges to carry out their developmental work at the local levels. Therefore, in order to make sure that these local bodies function properly, following are the suggestions. First, there should be a fiscal and financial autonomy which should be given to the local self-governments. Second, there should be active participation of the people and the society as a whole to ensure proper outcomes of local developmental programs initiated in the local area. Third, there should be clarity regarding the functions of the gram, block and district panchayats. Fourth, there should be other sources of revenue assigned to these local self-governments by the state. Fifth, coordination and cooperation from bureaucracy as well as strong political will of the state are required for the well-functioning of these local bodies. Sixth, there is a need to improve the administrative setup of these local bodies by bringing the local civil servants under their control and making them responsible to the local people. Seventh, there should be well-defined accountability measures to ensure that the local people's needs are fulfilled. Eighth, there should be regular workshops both at the state and national levels to train the local officials and to impart them with the necessary skills to carry out their respective jobs. Ninth, the elections must hold regularly as per the guidelines laid down by the Government of India, and there must be a transparency in the selection of the chosen members of the local self-government. Last but not the least, the state government must ensure effective access of local people to basic education so that there is not only equitable people's participation but also that it will ensure that the participated people are more informed about the local area development and the local needs of the people. To sum up, there is a lot to be done by the central and the state governments for development of local self-governments to ensure that local level development go hand in hand with the national development and there is an equal opportunity for all.